Welcome back to the Mostly Legal Podcast, a show where we tell the stories of people who make law firms operate. I'm Amanda Koplos, Chief Operating Officer at Sheffield, Lohman & Wilson.
And I'm Rob Joyner, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Centerbase.
Okay, Rob, I have a question for you.
What's that?
Weren't you the one who said we don't do repeat guests?
Yes, I may have said that, but when it comes to our guest today, I had to make an exception.
Well, I'm glad you did, because we are thrilled to welcome back Debbie Foster, our very first repeat guest. And honestly, it's our honor that she agreed to return.
Debbie is the founder and CEO at Affinity Consulting Group, and she's a powerhouse when it comes to helping law firms rethink their business strategy, technology, and operations. In this episode, we're diving into one of her favorite topics, when and if a law firm should hire a chief operating officer.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty, what a COO should be doing, how small firms can adapt the role, and whether handing out the title too soon could possibly water down its significance. Oh, and spoiler alert, if your COO can't actually tell anyone what to do, you might not have a real COO.
We also talk about leadership structures in law firms, the future of business management in the legal world, and of course, we couldn't resist some friendly banter about AI, art committees, and my incredible taste in technology choices.
Okay, incredible is a strong word, but yes, we cover a lot. So whether you're an administrator, a law firm leader, or just someone who wants to run a firm better, this episode is packed with insight you won't want to miss. Well, Debbie, welcome today. You are our first repeat guest on the Mostly Legal Podcast. Rob has been very adamant that he's not allowing repeat guests. So you should take that as a huge compliment, although it's really the compliment is ours that you have come back on.
Wow, I didn't know we weren't allowing repeat guests, and I slid in under the radar. That's pretty awesome.
Debbie, we could do like a whole series with you, the amount of information you share and the amount of knowledge you drop. So we had to do it.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to support the show because I love your show.
Well, thank you. You have your own little podcast. And how's that one going? I was on your episode twice, so I feel like I was a repeat guest. It only makes sense.
You were a repeat guest. So it's amazing. It has been such a great experience. We're on a little season break right now, and it's coming back in a little bit of a different form in the summer. So okay. I'm excited about that. I don't have all the details worked out yet, so I can't do the big reveal on this show, but this show's about you guys and your show anyway.
Oh, so. Appreciate it. Okay. So the last time you were on, we got a little bit of a background about how you started Affinity Consulting. And so you don't need to go through all of that because we're going to make people listen to the first time, but give us just a high level overview of, how you started Affinity and overall what you kind of spend your day doing.
Sure. So Affinity started with a major focus on technology, helping law firms adopt technology. And back then, 25 plus years ago, it was for some lawyers the very first time they had a computer on their desk. So it was literally adopting technology from the get. And through that, maybe next 10 or 15 years, one of the things that became very apparent is technology is only part of the story, right? Mm-hmm. It's people and how they get their work done, and it's reimagining new processes. And so our business has evolved to helping people think differently about how they get their work done and helping people think differently about how the business of law happens, right? It's a new world out there, and there's all kinds of new opportunities and also some new threats, but most of those new threats lead us down the road of new opportunities. And Affinity is there to help law firms figure out how to be and stay relevant into the future and reimagine all the things that have needed to be reimagined for a really long time.
And you have grown significantly over the years.
We have about 100 people. We're in 24 states, and we've been remote first for about 12 years.
You're doing it right.
That didn't happen.
Law firms could take a lesson from you.
Yeah, and all the time when I say that to law firms, when they tell me how they can't be a hybrid workplace or a remote workplace, I tell them that we are, and they say, well, you're not a law firm. And I say, I mean, while your statement is factual, it's also not really relevant. But Okay. And also I have like 40 lawyers who work at Affinity. So if it's like a lawyer
Wow.
personality thing, you can absolutely do it. You just can't do it the same way that you did in office culture, right? You just have to do it differently.
Debbie, I'm a huge Affinity fan. I try to send as many people your way as I possibly can, because I think it is so much more than just picking technology. It ends up, going splintering in all different directions. You need to look at it holistically. Now, one of those things that sometimes comes up in your conversations that we talked about before the episode is, when is the right time to hire a COO? So if a firm comes to you and says, hey, we're thinking about hiring a COO, what framework do you give them, or what do you tell them, or questions you put in front of them as to whether or not it's the right time for that firm to bring a chief operating officer on?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics, and I've enjoyed bantering with you all about it. I mean, my first question is always, tell me what problem you're trying to solve. Before you tell me what you think the answer is, tell me what problem you're trying to solve, right? Because oftentimes a COO is not going to do what they think a COO is going to do. So I want to know what problem you're trying to solve. And then before I hear them out on that, and then I ask them how they currently make decisions. Like, tell me about the last 3 or 4 decent sized decisions that were made at your firm, and tell me how it happened. Whose idea was it? How many committees did it had to go through? How many conversations did you? Yeah, I want to know about that. And that's really where I start, because I think that just like technology, which also doesn't solve problems, a COO is not going to be set up to solve problems in a successful way for a law firm if a law firm is not ready for that.
Nope, we're not. So, Debbie, we have talked about this. We've done some shorts on it. We have spoken at it on some roundtables. I've been thinking a lot about this concept of small firm COO, right? Because we have talked a lot about that the role of the chief operating officer should be very strategic in nature, and they should be leading the charge on issues of strategy. How does that work in a small firm? So you have 4 or 5 attorneys, and the firm administrator is very tactical day to day. Still has to run payroll. Still is hiring the receptionist. Still does all that. Make sure the coffee is ordered, and when the kitchen backs up in the sink, they're in there plunging the sink, right? So they're the only administrator. That's a lot different role than the role I have as COO of a mid-sized firm. Does the title still fit?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm going to answer it. I think there's a couple of different paths that we could go down here. So first, I don't think that the COO title should just be handed out to the most senior executive business leader in your firm, because you set people up with expectations that don't make any sense. We already have a struggle with clarity around job descriptions in law firms, right? Who's responsible for what? And so just giving someone a title doesn't actually make them a strategic COO.
Right.
So I'd say that's the first place I would stop and pause for a second and say, we're talking about a small firm. What problem is the small firm trying to solve? Are they trying to take some of the decision making off of their lawyers so their lawyers can focus on the things that fall within their superpowers? And if so, do you have the right person at the firm to do that, which is sometimes a challenging conversation because that person is sometimes in that conversation. Right. A lot of times people will ask me if I think a lawyer should run a law firm. I say, I don't think that's actually the right question. I think that what I would ask you is, what are the qualities necessary to successfully run your business that happens to also be a law firm? And then if we rattle off those qualities and we interview someone who happens to also be a lawyer, sure, why not?
But there are a lot of people who went to law school and just found that wasn't their passion, their forte. It's not where their skill set lies. What's been kind of weighing on me is the risk of giving someone a title. If they give it to them prematurely, does that dilute the significance across the industry? If you have just somebody that's a firm administrator, I've been a firm administrator for 20 years, I want to be COO. Well, did your job duties change? Has the firm changed? Has your authority changed? Like, are you part of a conversation you weren't previously a part of? Do you have different decision-making power? And so this has kind of been weighing on me. And so I'm curious if that's something that you've kind of run across also.
Yeah. And I think that in those conversations around, is it an executive director or firm administrator or a COO? It really is a strategy, responsibility, and authority question, right? In my mind, it's those three things. Are they going to be strategic thinkers? And by the way, people can be trained to be strategic thinkers.
Right.
So you might have someone who could be an amazing strategic thinker, but has not had any investment in them in becoming a strategic thinker. And then number two, are you going to give them the responsibility that a business leader, an executive business leader would have, and give them the authority that they need to execute on the decisions that they should be allowed to make? And if yes, then what percentage of that person's time needs to be spent on that? Because, for you, you're managing and running and operating and doing all of the things for a much larger firm. If we're talking about a 4 or 5 lawyer firm, that COO role, the hat might only be worn for 25% of the time.
Or less, yeah.
Right. And so then the strategy is, how do we elevate that person to be able to function in that role when they have that hat on? And is that person willing to say, sometimes I'm going to take that hat off and I'm going to get the bills out?
Yeah.
Or take the trash out, or hire the receptionist, or whatever it is that I have to do.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't be, but I think we have to set really realistic expectations about what the whole role looks like.
And I love just sitting here listening. I'm just sitting here listening, not even speaking at all. But Debbie, if a firm decides that they're going to bring a COO on, right? They've spoken to you, they've made the decision. What other steps do you recommend they take before they go out and begin the search?
I think there needs to be a conversation with equity partners and a management committee or an executive committee about what responsibilities will be handed over along with the proper authority to that person. And we need to have either alignment and agreement, or alignment and all of the people who do not agree, disagree, and commit.
Yeah.
I don't actually care which one it is. It's whatever you can pick. But, and so we have to establish this is what will fall in this person's responsibility. I think I might have told you guys this, but I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Chicago, and this law firm COO was there, and he had just quit his job. And someone said, "Why did you quit?" And he said, "I cannot work somewhere where I am literally not in charge of anyone." As a COO.
I can't tell anyone what to do is what I think.
Right. I can't tell anyone what to do. I would say, I would tell a legal secretary what, no, you can't do this, or yes, you can do this. They would just go to their lawyer, and their lawyer would be like, don't worry about it. You can just,
that's not a COO, like spoiler alert. Right.
Not. So yeah, I think we got to have that conversation is, are you really ready for a COO? And let's talk about what that means. And let's walk through some hypotheticals. We're going to replace that picture on the wall. That is not going to fall. You all are just going to come in one day and there's going to be a new picture there.
Yep.
And you're not allowed to say a word about it. Like
you can hate
don't
that
like
art.
It. That's right.
But if you,
not your job.
Now, some firms will have an art committee, but the COO better sit on the art committee and chair the art committee or whatever.
Committee.
But also, spoiler. Let me do
there's no problem with an art committee.
Again.
Come on.
Okay, listen, we're choosing art committee specifically to pick on you, Rob. But spoiler alert, you do not need an art committee.
You do not. It just doesn't matter that much. All the people who think, nothing personal, Rob, of course. It's on my bucket list to have a Rob Joyner piece in my house. It's going to happen for sure.
I'm going to need a promotion to a much larger firm, a COO, to put a Rob Joyner art piece in my wall. But
I have a very big wall that has Rob Joyner's name on it. That's my current art. It just says Rob
I appreciate
Joyner.
the plug. I appreciate the plug.
I have a dartboard with Robert Joyner's name on it. So
I thought it was my face, Amanda.
Well, it is. Okay, it's your face.
What would the podcast episode be without?
What would it be without?
Rob?
That's exactly right.
Debbie, is there Amanda was asking you about, is the COO title right for a small firm? Is there, I don't know if it's this clear and cut, but is there a certain size firm that should start thinking about that role and bringing that role in?
I think when they get big enough to have an executive committee or a management committee, that's a good time to think about executive leadership. But honestly, like that idea of lawyers taking the available time that they have to do things that they're really good at is the buy-in piece. The buy-in isn't the COO thing. A lawyer could pick out the next piece of art. I mean, some could, maybe some you wouldn't want to, but some could. But that doesn't mean that that's what they should do. Like we have to get away from everything that everyone thinks they can do, and start working on what we should do.
I use that example all the time in our firm. Our managing partner is brilliant, and he runs other successful businesses. He has a tax background. He's a corporate attorney, so he can run a business, and he could run this law firm and probably would do it better than me. But what he should be doing in order for this firm to continue to be successful is practicing law and bringing in clients, because the way he does it, no one else can do it. And so I think that's, Rob, at firm size, that to me is almost the distinguishing factor.
Right.
Is you talk about this throughout your life. Just because you can do it best doesn't mean you're the only one who can do it. And my husband tells me that all the time when I'm telling him he's not loading the dishwasher correctly. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do dishes. What am I talking about? Okay, so let's talk about it. I have come up through my career, just almost celebrating 20 years doing this. Started as a firm administrator, moved on to another firm where I was a branch administrator, and then took this role. Did not start out with the title COO, worked my way up to that in terms of gaining authority, gaining strategy, building trust. It comes over time. So for people who want to take that path, what are some other alternate paths? What do they look like other than the way I did it that you see?
Well, as you both probably know, and someone actually recently asked me about hiring a COO from outside of legal, and did I have any idea what % success rate a COO from outside of legal? And I stopped and I thought about it for a good 60 seconds. And I know of some people who have come in from outside of legal, but none of them are still in their roles. Not one. And I could only name like 4 or 5, and not one is still in legal.
You have to be beaten down for decades is what you're saying. No, I'm kidding. I love doing this. Let them all go back to another industry. I'll take their.
And I love it. I love it too. And so, sometimes the things that I say can come across as like lawyer bashing. And I really don't mean to do that. If I was the COO of a firm and I was sitting next to a brilliant managing partner, I would say, let's talk about what I can't do.
Yeah.
Get new clients, practice law, solve a big, gigantic problem for a client that saves them millions of dollars. I mean, maybe I could do that, but I probably shouldn't do that. But,
you probably have, Debbie.
Yeah.
but that's like so you might say that there are things that I do that you could also do, but what if you spent your time? And here's the other thing that I think is what that makes this challenging is I think that we have a bigger picture governance challenge, right? It's not a reasonable ask for future generations, for Gen X and millennials, to say, give up your practice for 3 years or 6 years, or depending on your term limits or whatever, give up your practice to run this firm. We don't hire people like that anymore. That's not how it's working anymore. So the governance challenge is, if I was leading a law firm as a managing partner, I would say we have to rely on business executives to run this firm. So as we put a governance structure in place that lets our lawyers have some opportunity and leadership, but in a limited way where they don't have to give up their practices. They aren't working 2 full-time jobs. They can go to all the soccer games they want to go to.
Right.
They can do the things that they want to do with their family. those two things can coexist. So it's almost like we want to talk about hiring a COO, but then I want to say, actually, I want you to reconsider how you govern your law firm. That's actually what I want you to do.
Which is very difficult.
It's a weird
because
ask.
You're an owner of a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have 20 owners if you have 20 partners in a firm. And, sometimes the difference between equity and non-equity can matter, but do you need to know how much the receptionist is paid? What value do you bring in knowing that information? And maybe it's a lot, but maybe you just need to know that I spent 4% more on salaries this year, or whatever that percentage is, 1%, 2%, so, but that's like a very finite example, but I think it's aligns with what you're saying, Debbie, that just because you've always voted on it doesn't mean it always has to be voted on by you.
For sure. And when I sit around a table doing strategic planning for a firm, and if they have a COO or an executive director, they're typically in the room with other business leaders. They have a CFO
Right.
or a marketing person. But when I sit around that table, one of the things that is often true is that there are stakeholders missing, right? The people at this table, half of them won't be here in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them will not be here in 10 years. And
Right.
the people in their 40s, and I don't mean to be age, but like the younger leaders coming up in our firms are not sitting at those tables. And those are the voices that we need to hear. So we're trying to do strategic planning with the people who are accustomed to and very used to and can't imagine another way to do governance. It's not always the right group of people at the table. So challenging who our stakeholders are and making sure that they have a seat at what does the future of this law firm looks like, I think is also really important.
It's so interesting you talk about seat at the table, because I have a friend who is the executive director of a firm, and they have a firm partnership, and then they have a management committee. And the management committee are these three choosing to be like triple co-chair. They don't have a managing partner situation. They can't get the governance worked out. And at the end of every partner meeting, she's in there and she meets with the three of them as part of the executive committee. And then every single time they go into executive session and ask her to leave the room. And she said, all that happens in that executive session is somebody else takes the notes and walks out and gives me a to-do list. And 9.99 times out of 10, I had feedback on that I could have given them to tell them why you should or should not have done that, what project that was already in. And so my advice to firms would be to say, just like with boards, what are you using an executive session for? Because if you're using an executive session without your executive business leader, it should really only be for very few small things. And one of them would be, what does that person's compensation look like, right? Maybe that's the only thing. But if you're leaning into a true business leader and you want to ask what's a turning point, to me, that's one of them.
I totally agree. And, there are maybe a couple of things that, like if you're talking about exiting a shareholder and it's a weird, ugly situation, like there are a couple of instances where that makes sense, but it's so tiny. Like it's just, and sometimes, when Amanda's in the room, she sees things differently than you do. And that, whether you take it or leave it, the voice at the table and the seat at the table is still critically important.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Centerbase, legal practice and management software designed to deliver optimal efficiency, profitability, and business growth for your mid-sized law firm. Learn more about how Centerbase helps you practice, manage, and grow your law firm with modern technology at centerbase.com.
So, Debbie, we're talking a lot about key business leaders within a firm. My question to you would be, other than the COO or executive director, for a mid-sized law firm to be successful, what other key business leader type positions should they consider bringing in to the firm?
And we'll just take a minute to define my version of what a mid-sized law firm is, right?
I thought the same thing as I was putting this question together. Yes. It's always the question that comes up.
Listen, ALA has had entire strategic sessions around trying to define what a mid-sized firm is. So I would love to hear what the queen of law firm consulting says.
It depends where you live. Like I just had a firm that asked me to change the word mid-sized firm and change it to small firm in my proposal. And it's a Chicago firm that has 120 lawyers.
Wow.
And they didn't, when they showed the proposal to their executive committee, they didn't want the executive committee to think that I don't work with small firms. I opened up my mouth to speak, and then I was just like, you know what? It's illiterate. What? Yes. I'll just change the word. Like
that's like a small large firm. A small
right.
At 100 plus attorneys, you're at a small large.
Right.
It's like, what are you trying to say, Amanda?
So
let me try that word 10 more times to see if I can get
Put those together again.
So for me, I think about small firms as like 1 to 10 lawyers. And I think about mid-sized firms like 5 to 100. But, so there's a little overlap there. It really depends on what kind of law they practice. I have some firms that are 100 lawyers that have 50 support people. There are 150 people. If they were in Chicago, they would think of themselves as small or maybe mid. But if they were in Kansas, they'd be the largest law firm in Kansas.
Right.
And so there's a perspective. But for me, when I think about a mid-sized firm, we go 5 to 100 and, there's a lot of firms in like the 5 to 50 range, 5 to 50 lawyers. That group, before you cross over the 50 mark, typically doesn't have the same number of executive business leaders as you get when you cross over the 50 lawyer mark. But I think that there are some new opportunities from an executive business leader perspective, like client experience and innovation officer. Like we need to be thinking about the future of the practice of law through the eyes of our clients. What do our clients want to see? Because it's really easy to figure out what the future of the practice of law should look like if the lawyers were designing it, especially if we're talking about the lawyers who are currently in charge of law firms. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm painting with a broad brushstroke. There are some who are like hungry and fired up and trying to figure out how to do it differently. But if we invited a client experience person into the room, and we invited a professional development business executive into the room, and we invited an innovation person into the room. You can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of thing. I'm the old dog and I learned a new trick. And it just happened a couple of weeks ago. And it's a very real example because our CIO sent me his IT charter, and I sent it back to him and I was like, how about you help us think outside the box, be innovative, let's level up here. This is just IT, data, applications, that kind of stuff. How about we level it up a little bit? He kind of pushed back on me and said, I don't think that's the IT role. And I complained to other people and was like, WTF. Then I go to this conference and this guy was like, innovation should not fall in the technology camp.
IT, yeah.
And this guy eloquently in 3 minutes explained why IT needs to be focused on data, keep the lights on, keep the, security, that kind of stuff. And innovation needs to be like skunk works, figuring out what's next, thinking outside the box, finding a willing participant and dragging them over here and saying, try something new. You can't that. And I was just like, yes.
Right. Well, they're designed to keep things status quo, right? That's I've talked about this for years about what the role of IT is, and the role is to keep things working. And innovation means break it. And it is completely juxtaposed.
That was good. That was good. I like that. Don't cut that out. Don't cut that out.
I'm just going to stop. You know what I was saying. Debbie knows what I was saying. Our audience knows what I'm saying. Let's just keep messing with my
It's
words.
Monday afternoon, Amanda. It's okay.
I took 2 days off and went with my kids. And so anyways, it's been a day. But
hey, Debbie, I have a question about that. So I've always shared, I've thought the same thing, right? Especially when you're thinking about IT. I also think sometimes the more senior the role too. So for instance, if it's a director of IT, right, versus a CTO at a firm, the CTO is going to be a lot more strategic and maybe forward thinking, where a director level person might only focus on keeping the lights on, right, keeping systems working. Do you agree with that?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's the exact same scenario of the firm administrator that got promoted to a COO, right? There's lots of CIOs or CTOs that are network administrators, and they got that role because it seemed like the next logical step in their career path. But maybe their responsibilities didn't change the way that they needed to change. And so I think, I made that little throwaway comment earlier about how we struggle with job descriptions in a law firm, and feedback and measures of success. And, my 3 professional goals for this year. What am I going to do that's needle moving and impactful to the firm? No matter what, you could be the receptionist and still have to have those things. So I think that if we start off with, okay, so that person is a chief technology officer. Go ask your best friend of choice, Claude or ChatGPT, as we talked about earlier today.
Hey, we're going to get there, Debbie.
We're going to get there. We'll fight over that.
What is the distinction between a chief technology officer? Like, leave all the keep the lights on stuff. What are the needle moving initiatives that a chief technology officer should be responsible for at my firm? You should ask that question. And then you should say, is this person keeping the lights on only, or are they taking some things to the next level? So I think it's hard
to ask for any one person, just like it is for a COO. And while you're doing that, it kind of pivots into our next question, which is, you're going to pitch a major technology investment to your firm. And what does the team look like? And that's where you're coming into, can your head of IT also think strategic and innovative? Because if that person is sitting at the table telling you, here's how it's going to integrate with our existing systems, here's what the security requirements are, here's what the time is, can they also then say, here's all the places that are going to get broken in a good way? And so I'm getting to a question, I think. What if you have a framework for successfully pitching a major technology investment, what does that look like?
So, I am always, in the initial conversations that I'm having with people, I am always trying to figure out who's in the naysayer camp, who feels threatened by new technology coming in, who's the supporter, who's the cheerleader, what are the real problems that they're trying to solve? Because all of those things and people are sitting around that table, right? And sometimes the right technology solution makes people worry about their jobs and makes people worry that they won't know how to support a new product the way they know how to support the old product. So maybe it isn't they're worried about their job. They're worried about looking stupid or not being able to solve problems as quickly as they once did. And so, and I try to normalize all of that. So when I see that come out, I stop and say, Rob, one of our objectives when we help you implement this is to get you up to speed so you still feel like you can provide the same level of support to your users that you support now. Now, I know it's not going to be apples to apples because you've got 20 years of supporting this product and you'll have 20 days of supporting that product, but that's why we're here and that's why we're going to help you. And so you can learn alongside of us. This isn't going to be like a magic trick. We're not going to be like, ta-da, here it is. You can travel that journey with us and you can learn. And that is, for me to gain the people onto my side, it's figuring out what they're worried about, figuring out what they're scared about. And I hope that I have the worried and scared people at the table, because when firms don't invite them to the table and they think they're making my life easier, they're actually making our lives harder by pushing those people to the side.
I have a partner who I'm kind of starting to build an AI like exploratory committee, and I have a litigation attorney who comes to me and a partner and says, I would like to be on that committee, but I'm going to come in that room and tell you why everything you want to do is wrong. And so you don't want me on that committee. And I said, no, correction. I do want you on that committee. I want your contrary thoughts. I want to try to win you over. That will be my measure of success if I can prove a business case to you. And knowing that you don't want it will make me work even that much harder to do it. So yes, you're on. I don't know why I did that. I could have just probably gotten this passed easier, but it will be more successful because he gets to fight me in the beginning instead of fighting me after the contract is signed and everything is implemented.
Well, and I think that he'll bring valuable perspective too, right? And he will be the voice of some of the people, and that's part of it. Is you get those people at the table, and they are representing some number of people in the firm. It's pretty rare that one person is like a lone ranger and has these weird thoughts that no one else has, right? Mm-hmm. So it prepares us for rollout.
So, Rob and I have talked, and you and I, the three of us talk a lot about AI, and we're all just starting to dabble in it, right? And I think for the three of us, a lot of what our daily usage is in large language models, right? You and I use a lot of ChatGPT. I use Copilot. Rob's a big Claude fan. And so we love to talk about how we use it ourselves. And we could probably each say a way we have used it today. But you're starting to see this. And I know it's like the two letters that, nobody wants to hear, but just one or two ways that you have seen real world applications in firms that have been successfully implemented in the last 6 months, maybe.
I'll tell you one story from a firm that I worked with last week. We did a half-day strategy session, and it was all focused on business development. And, that would have normally been like a 2 or 2.5 or 3 hour session. But instead, I gave 3 different groups. They were all in person and I was remote. I gave 3 different groups, 3 different prompts. And I asked them all to use ChatGPT. And since it was business development, one of them had the free version, 2 of them had paid. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, we're just, and I had them go. I gave them 20 minutes to come back with 10 outside the box business development ideas.
Oh,
Claude could have done it faster.
Oh my God.
Keep going.
I'm sorry, but they all use chat. Chat.
Faster versus better are 2 very different words.
Faster and better.
Okay.
Better,
so
faster.
They came back from
small,
this
large.
little small, large, mid, big, little something.
We digress.
We've
Go
got
ahead.
all the adjectives today, don't we?
All of them. They came back from this exercise, and it was almost impossible for me to get them to talk about the result because they couldn't stop talking about how amazing it was.
Yeah.
And they ended up walking away with 10 things. Now, when they came up with their list of 10, I don't know that I was blown away by like those are the most unique things I've ever heard. So there's that. But just the fact that they had a thought partner along with their brainstorming, right, made a huge difference. And I had them have chat interview them and ask them questions about what they thought was important about business development. So it was an interesting experiment. That is one scenario. And then I have a friend who is a COO at a firm in California, and him and I have been working on. He works in a firm that is very, very challenging, and him and I have been working on their strategic plan. We're doing some things a little bit differently, but we've been working on their strategic plan, and we have. He has the enterprise version of Chat, so we've been able to feed some firm specific stuff into there. And we have fed in some emails so Chat could get a sense of like tone and fears and things that people are excited about. And it helped us build a pitch deck for their strategic plan, taking all of there's 11 equity partners, taking all of this took a lot of time, but we fed it all of this information about their equity partners. And it helped us with a pitch deck that was very specifically pointed statements and comments that we knew would resonate with them because of how they feel about different parts of their firm. And it was wildly successful. Those are just two little examples, but they probably feel a little bigger.
Debbie, what's interesting to me is both examples that you brought to us were more on the operations side.
I was just
operating
about
the firm,
to say that. Mm-hmm.
And they weren't around the actual practice of law.
But I think
I don't like helping people with that.
Well,
that's fair. Know your audience, right?
Right. But it's funny because Rob, we were actually just talking about this, and we had a roundtable, and the advice I gave to administrators when they asked me, where do we start, was you need to know how to use it yourself. You need to, as a firm business leader, come up with ways on a regular basis that you can solve your own problems, because only then will you be able to understand how to solve lawyer problems. Like I don't know what product on the market is going to provide the best deposition summaries. I'm headed to some conferences. I'm going to interview some places. I'm going to work on that. But if I don't understand the difference between a large language model, if I don't understand security differences, if I don't understand paid versus an enterprise version, and that's all in just a very small generative prompt AI piece. If I don't understand all of that, I can't lead my firm through picking out huge technology to practice law. So I might be putting words in your mouth, but I think that's where you were leaning.
For sure. And we do have a different team of people at my office that are focused about how they help lawyers use the tools to deliver services to their clients in a different and a better and a reimagined way. That just is not me. Like, I don't, someone just asked me if I could compare co-counsel to Harvey. And I just started laughing, and I was like, that's going to be a hard no, but I'm sure someone can. I said, have you used Perplexity to ask it what the differences between co-counsel and Harvey are? Because that's what I would suggest that you do. Like, you don't need to find a human who knows that. The models
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Debbie's and I, we have JDs, and our JD stands for just did it.
I would say this, Amanda, to your point about, having the administrators or the operations people use it first before they roll it out. Rarely do I ever start with a blank page these days, right? The days of sitting there staring at the blank page and saying where to start. If you're still doing that, start using some kind of AI, because it is so much easier to edit than create something from scratch. Mm-hmm. It has changed the way I work. And it would change the way a lot of administrators work as well.
Great. And I'll tell you, like, one of the things that I do, again, we all know I'm the chat fan with Amanda, but I have a chat project called LinkedIn Posts. Mm-hmm. And every time I have something that I want to post on LinkedIn, I throw it into this chat. I just say, I open it up on my phone and I attach a screenshot or whatever. And then when I'm ready for a new post, I just go into my project and say, I need a post today. Please don't use rocket ships, green check marks, or those M dashes, because then everyone knows you wrote it and I didn't. Write it in my tone and style. And then it gives me the starting point. I paste it into LinkedIn. I edit it the way that I want to edit it. And then I give it back to chat and say, here's what I ended up posting. Because that's how you get the real value from it. It's not just a one-way conversation. It is a two-way conversation. Let it suggest something to you. Go back and say, I took what you wrote as the first draft and here's my final copy. Please remember my tone, my style, how I write, what the sentence structures that I typically use. That's how you make it more and more valuable for you.
Debbie, you put out a post about an hour ago. I read it and I was like, ooh, those 2 lines are really good. I wonder if Debbie wrote those.
You'll never know.
Put it through. Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
If you tell me which lines
good.
they are, I can tell you if I wrote which ones I wrote and which ones chat wrote. But, and I think I can say this with absolute certainty. Every single thing that I produce, whether it is a blog post, a presentation, an article, a blog, whatever it is in partnership with ChatGPT. Every single thing that I do.
It's awesome. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of different topics, and I know we're coming up on time. So, Debbie, as a past guest, you know that we always wrap up our episodes with a little segment we call Pitch Your Passion. And so I know you're passionate about a lot of things. We could take some time to rip on Rob's choices of AI, or you could let us know something that you're very passionate about right now.
So, I mean, I've talked a little bit about this already, but I think and this kind of ties back to what we talked about when you said you have a podcast too. I am really passionate about mid-sized law firms figuring out how to do the next thing. I mean, that is something, and I'm probably passionate about it in a way that 99% of the people in this country, not you two, would be like, why do you care so much about that? Because I think you guys also care about that. Mm-hmm. But I think that there is such an amazing opportunity for these mid-sized firms that can deliver that kind of client service that I think clients want, that trusted advisor relationship with their lawyer, their law firm. But I think they have to think about it differently. And I want to be a part of that solution. And that's my 2025. All of my professional development objectives are all around how do I bring something to the table for a mid-sized firm to help them say what got us here is not going to get us there. But this is what could get us to that next place. And that's what I'm working on. And I'm so excited about it. I can barely stand it. And it's kind of crazy, but
Debbie, between that and reading your LinkedIn post, I want to dig into so much more, but we're out of time. So we'll save it for next time, Debbie. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Wait. Is there going to be, can I be on for a third time?
Is she going to be a third?
Yes.
Oh my
gosh. Oh, thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Mostly Legal podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
Stay tuned as we uncover more behind-the-scenes stories of law firms with the best minds in the business. And Rob.
Thanks.